Zeus has a massive problem. The king of the gods runs Olympus like a paranoid dictator. His dysfunctional royal family is constantly plotting the next coup. Paranoia is high. Politics are deadly. Zeus needs to eradicate biological threats on Earth but refuses to risk Olympian blood. So, he builds a disposable mortal asset, an off-the-books weapon named Perseus. For 19 years, Perseus thinks he is just a fisherman, but his physical data is abnormal. Resting heart rate exactly 40 beats per minute. Muscle fatigue mathematically 0. He is a biological drone waiting for activation. That activation comes from King Polydectes. The corrupt tyrant wants to marry Perseus's mother. To remove Perseus, the king engineers a political trap, demanding a tax of exactly 1 horse. Perseus owns 0 horses. "Bring me a horse, or your mother becomes my property," the king smiles. Perseus uses his impossible physical metrics to make a high-leverage counteroffer. "I'll bring you the head of Medusa." The king agrees immediately, thinking Perseus just signed his death warrant. He is wrong. Perseus walks into the wasteland. The Gorgon Medusa has a 100% mortality rate. Suddenly, 2 strangers appear. They look like off-site military handlers. It is Hermes and Athena. "You are walking into a hot zone," Hermes says flatly. He hands Perseus a weapon. This adamantine sickle cuts solid rock. Do not lose it. Athena drops a polished bronze shield. "Line of sight is lethal," she warns. "Look at her directly, and your cells calcify in exactly 3 seconds. They hand him winged sandals and a classified containment bag called a hubris. "Top speed is Mach 1, Hermes smirks. Perseus realizes these are not magical gifts. This is a targeted military supply drop. He is an outsourced contractor. The gods are too scared to do it themselves, but the handlers refuse to reveal Medusa's exact location. To find the target, Perseus must locate the Graeae, 3 ancient witches who share exactly 1 eyeball and 1 tooth. They are the ultimate gatekeepers of classified information. Perseus triggers the sandals, launching into the sky. He locates the Graeae in a lightless cave at the absolute edge of the world. He doesn't ask politely. He uses maximum leverage. He waits for the exact millisecond they pass their single eyeball in midair. He swoops in and snatches it. "I have your hardware," Perseus says calmly. "Give me the Gorgon's coordinates, or I crush it." The witches panic. "I know about the hidden inventory," Perseus demands. "Give me the Helm of Darkness." The witches immediately surrender the exact GPS coordinates and hand over the helm, granting total invisibility. A massive tactical upgrade. Perseus tosses the eye back and flies toward the target. The environment quickly turns into a dead zone. Just statues. 314 men, frozen in agony. The collateral damage of a broken system. Perseus lands silently. He raises the mirrored shield at a precise 45-degree angle, watching only the reflection. He enters the cavern and diagnoses the threat vector. Medusa isn't a monster born of pure evil. She is a victim. Once a mortal priestess, she was assaulted by Poseidon, then brutally cursed by Athena out of petty jealousy. Perseus pauses. The system is rigged. The gods created this biological problem, and now they use him to clean it up. Medusa is sleeping. Her hair consists of 30 venomous vipers, tracking thermal heat signatures within a 20-meter radius. Perseus knows he has exactly 1 shot. If he hesitates, he joins the statue garden. He feels cold, calculated precision. 5 meters, 3 meters, 1 meter. He swings the adamantine blade, a flawless, frictionless decapitation. Pause. The head drops, but the myth takes a violent turn. Medusa was pregnant with Poseidon's children. As her toxic blood hits the stone, the anomaly triggers an instant gestation. From her severed neck bursts Pegasus, a massive winged stallion, and Chrysaor, a giant wielding a golden sword. The remaining 2 Gorgon sisters wake up. They scream, launching into the air. Perseus doesn't stick around. His mission parameters only require the head. He shoves Medusa's bleeding skull into the kibis bag and pulls the heavy drawstring tight. Then, he equips the Helm of Darkness. He vanishes from the visible spectrum entirely. The sisters claw blindly at empty air. Perseus hits maximum velocity, leaving them in the dust. The mortal asset performed perfectly. But on his 1,908-kilometer return vector over Ethiopia, Perseus encounters a massive structural roadblock. Below him, the ocean boils. A 1,000-ton aquatic apex predator breaches the surface. It's the Cetus, a biological tank sent by Poseidon to execute a political punishment. On the cliffside, a young girl is chained to the wet rocks. Princess Andromeda. Her mother insulted the gods, so the gods demanded a human sacrifice. Classic dysfunctional royal family behavior. Innocent mortals paying the price for divine egos. Perseus hovers 50 meters above the water. This is not his fight. He could just fly home. But his analytical mind runs the numbers. The Cetus is 1,000 tons of dense armor, moving at exactly 40 knots. His sword is sharp, but a beast this size can absorb 1,000 cuts before central nervous system failure. The sandals give elite mobility, but zero offensive output. He cannot win a war of attrition. He needs asymmetric warfare. Perseus dives, landing on the jagged rocks next to Andromeda. "Why are you doing this?" Andromeda screams over the crashing waves. "Just leave." Perseus looks at her. "I am auditing the system," he says calmly. He turns to face the monster. The beast lunges, ready to swallow the entire cliff. At the last possible millisecond, Perseus reaches into the bag. He doesn't use the sword. He weaponizes the anomaly. He pulls out the Gorgon's head. The Cetus makes direct eye contact with the severed skull. The biological reaction is instantaneous. A 100% conversion rate from flesh to stone. Pause. 1,000 tons of raging muscle instantly calcifies. The kinetic energy of the beast's massive lunge carries its newly petrified body forward. It slams into the cliffside, shattering into 1,000,000 jagged pieces into the boiling sea. Zero collateral damage, one flawless kill. Perseus bags the head and shatters Andromeda's iron chains with the adamantine sword. He offers her a strategic partnership. "Your political structure is compromised," Perseus tells her flatly. Andromeda glares at the broken chains, refusing to be a passive victim. "My family is a failed state," she spits. "They traded my life for their comfort. Get me out of here." They fly back to Seriphos. The return trip takes 2 full days. King Polydectes is throwing a massive banquet assuming Perseus is dead. He is currently forcing Perseus's mother to serve him wine. The king's power feels absolute. Until the heavy oak doors kick open. Perseus walks in. Andromeda stands right behind him, scanning for threats like a trained operative. The music stops instantly. "You actually survived," Polydectes sneers. "But I don't see a horse or a monster's head. Guards, kill him." 50 armored guards draw their bronze swords. Perseus doesn't negotiate with a corrupt system. "Close your eyes," Perseus whispers to his mother and Andromeda. He pulls the head by its snaky hair, holding it high. The king and 50 guards look directly at it. In exactly 3 seconds, the entire political hierarchy of the island turns to solid limestone. The tyrant is dead. The corrupt government is permanently dismantled. The unfair tax is repealed. Perseus achieves total dominance. He holds the ultimate weapon. He has the leverage to become a god himself. But Perseus analyzes the long-term compounding effects of hubris. He sees the hidden trap. The gods gave him this massive power so he would become dependent on it. He makes the most unpredictable move in mythological history. He opts out. He calls Athena down. "Take it back," he says. He hands over the mirrored shield, the adamantine sword, the helm of darkness, and the kibis. He completely strips himself of his asymmetric advantages. Athena is stunned. "You could rule the world," she says. "I'd rather own my own life," Perseus replies. He marries Andromeda. He rules his new kingdom with boring, zero-drama stability. He dies a natural death. By returning the hardware, he heavily protects his downside. But up on Olympus, Zeus reviews the post-mission data and completely misses the point. 2 targets neutralized, 0 Olympian casualties, a flawless success rate. Zeus makes a disastrous strategic decision. He initiates a mass breeding program, pumping out dozens of demigods with exponential physical power and aggressive egos. He creates Hercules. He creates Achilles. Zeus thinks he is building a security force. He is building a bomb. The flawless execution of the first weapon mathematically guaranteed the catastrophic failure of the next. The gods thought they could control the narrative, but the numbers never lie. What is your highest leverage move? Are you building a stable system like Perseus? Or are you scaling up a disaster like Zeus? Audit your own life. Drop your strategy in the comments below and subscribe to Mythkipedia for the next historical briefing. Imagine falling 6,000 meters from the sky. The wind is screaming. The air is freezing. The ground is rushing up to meet you at terrifying speed. You are not a god. You do not have wings. And the mythical winged horse that just carried you into the clouds is rapidly shrinking to a white speck above you. It is continuing its journey to the gates of heaven. Without you. As you plummet toward the jagged earth, you have exactly 3 minutes to figure out how you, the greatest champion of the ancient world, ended up dying like a discarded stone. The answer is simple. You forgot your place. You thought you were a king of the cosmos, but you were only ever a weapon, and weapons that turn on their masters get broken. This is the story of Bellerophon, the mortal who achieved a flawless record of victory, conquered every enemy, and destroyed himself the second he ran out of targets. To understand his catastrophic failure, we have to look at the politics of his era. Long before Heracles was born, Olympus needed a mortal champion to clean up the earth. They found Bellerophon. He was physically perfect, but politically radioactive. His real name was Hipponos. But after accidentally murdering his own brother in a dark family dispute, he was branded a cursed man. Exiled from his home, he wandered as a beggar, desperately seeking asylum. He finally found it in the kingdom of Argos. King Oedipus took him in and cleansed his blood guilt. But the royal court of Argos was a nest of vipers. Queen Antaya took one look at the handsome new exile and decided she wanted him. She cornered Bellerophon in the dark halls of the palace. "Take me," she whispered. "Take what is yours." Bellerophon backed away. "I will not betray the king who saved my life." But in the brutal politics of ancient Greece, rejecting a queen is a death sentence. Antaea's pride was shattered. If she could not have him, she would destroy him. She immediately ran to her husband, crying fake tears and tearing her own clothes. "Your guest tried to force himself on me," she screamed. "Kill him, or you are no man." King Perseus was furious. He wanted Bellerophon dead, but he had a massive political problem. Ancient Greek hospitality laws were absolute. You could not murder a guest who had eaten at your table. If you did, Zeus would personally curse your bloodline with madness. It was divine paranoia. So, the king engineered a loophole. He took a wooden tablet and sealed it with thick wax. Inside, he carved a single coded death warrant. "The man carrying this tablet assaulted your daughter. Execute him immediately." The king handed the sealed tablet to Bellerophon. "Deliver this to my father-in-law, King Oedipus, in Lycia. It is a matter of utmost importance." Bellerophon, the loyal servant, took his own death warrant and marched for 9 days straight to Lycia. King Oedipus welcomed the messenger with open arms. Following ancient protocol, Oedipus threw a massive 9-day banquet before even asking why Bellerophon was there. On the 10th day, the king cracked the wax seal and read the execution order. The blood drained from his face. He was trapped. He had just fed this man for over a week. He was bound by the exact same hospitality laws. He couldn't kill him without inviting the wrath of Zeus. So, King Oedipus designed an impossible labor. "I have a task for you," the king announced. "There is an unholy amalgamation destroying our western border. I need you to slay the Chimera. The Chimera wasn't just a monster. It was a divine punishment. A massive lion with a goat's head rising from its spine, and a venomous serpent for a tail. It possessed an internal furnace that breathed fire so hot it turned sand into glass. Entire legions of soldiers had marched into its territory and vanished into ash. It was a guaranteed death sentence. But Bellerophon didn't panic. He analyzed the battlefield. Fighting a fire-breathing beast on the ground was suicide. He needed the supreme vantage point. He needed Pegasus. Pegasus was a creature of pure myth, a winged stallion born from the severed neck of Medusa. Bellerophon tracked the beast to a sacred spring. Using a golden bridle forged by the goddess Athena herself, he forced the wild horse into submission. But here is a critical truth most myths ignore. Riding Pegasus was not a gift. It was physical torture. Flying at 6,000 meters causes severe hypoxia. The freezing air turns your blood to ice. It costs a mortal everything to wield divine power, but Bellerophon accepted the pain. He now had the ultimate combat advantage: altitude. He flew into Lycia and located the target, but he didn't draw his bronze sword. Bronze melts. Instead, he equipped his spear with a solid block of lead. He took Pegasus up into the clouds, staying well above the Chimera's lethal firing range. He initiated a massive dive. Approaching terrifying speeds, he aimed straight for the monster's roaring, fire-breathing mouth. At the last possible millisecond, he shoved the lead-tipped spear deep down the beast's throat and violently pulled up. The Chimera reacted instinctively. It roared, breathing a massive column of fire. The intense heat instantly melted the lead block. The molten liquid metal poured directly down the monster's throat, searing its internal organs and rapidly cooling into a solid mass inside its lungs. The unkillable terror of the ancient world choked to death on its own defense. Flawless victory. Bellerophon returned to the king and dropped the charred remains on the marble floor. The beast is dead. What's next? King Iobates was terrified. The suicide mission failed. He immediately issued a second order. The Solymi tribe is staging a violent rebellion on our borders. Wipe them out. The Solymi were the most brutal mountain warriors in the world. But Bellerophon didn't even draw his sword. Here is where the corruption began. He stopped treating his enemies like warriors and started treating them like insects. He took to the sky and lazily dropped heavy boulders on their camps, erasing their entire army in days without breaking a sweat. Iobates was sweating now. Fine. Go fight the Amazons. The Amazons were an elite, all-female military force that had never lost a war. Bellerophon didn't respect them either. He used the exact same effortless aerial tactics. He decimated their ranks from above, staying completely out of range of their legendary archers. He returned to the palace without a single scratch, entirely bored by the slaughter. King Iobates was out of options. The mortal simply refused to die. So, the king authorized a desperate betrayal. He took his 50 best royal guards, the absolute elite of his military, and hid them in a narrow canyon on Bellerophon's route home. When Bellerophon rode through, they attacked. It was a massacre. But not for Bellerophon. He didn't even use Pegasus. He dismounted just to feel something. He drew his bronze sword and slaughtered all 50 of the king's elite guards in brutal hand-to-hand combat. He didn't just defeat them, he made an example of them. Nobody survived. Covered in the blood of the king's own men, Bellerophon kicked open the throne room doors. He marched up to the trembling king. "Are you done sending men to die?" Bellerophon demanded. King Iobates finally broke. He fell to his knees and handed over the original coded tablet. "I was ordered to kill you by my own family, but clearly you are favored by the gods. I surrender." The king gave Bellerophon his daughter in marriage and signed over half the kingdom. Bellerophon went from a disgraced, exiled murderer to a massively wealthy king with a mythical winged beast. He had won the ultimate political game, and this is exactly where the psychological rot finalized. Here is a dark truth about human nature. When a mortal experiences an unbroken streak of absolute victory, their mind breaks. Competence mutates into supreme arrogance. Bellerophon looked at his vast kingdom. He looked at his flawless battle record. He looked at the kings bowing at his feet, and he asked himself a very dangerous question. If I am completely invincible, why am I taking orders from the sky? He stopped viewing himself as a mortal vessel. He genuinely believed he had become equal to the gods. The earth was suddenly too small for his ego. The worship of regular humans felt cheap. He wanted a seat on the ultimate throne. He wanted to rule Mount Olympus. I am a god, he declared. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't offer a sacrifice to Zeus. He simply walked outside, mounted Pegasus, and pointed the horse straight up. He was going to launch a one-man coup against heaven. Up they flew, piercing the thick clouds. The air grew thin. The temperature plummeted. But Bellerophon was blinded by the fire of his own massive ambition. He envisioned the golden gates of Olympus swinging open. He envisioned Zeus stepping aside in fear. But from the highest peak of the cosmos, Zeus was watching. Zeus wasn't scared. The king of the gods did not view Bellerophon as a threat. He viewed him as a flawed design, a mortal champion who had forgotten his boundaries. When mortals rebel, the gods usually respond with theatrical violence. Earthquakes, plagues, massive lightning strikes. But Zeus understood the exact nature of Bellerophon's disease. To strike him down with a lightning bolt would be to acknowledge him as a worthy opponent. It would validate his delusion of grandeur. Zeus decided to teach the ultimate lesson in power. He wouldn't use his massive divine strength to stop the greatest warrior on Earth. He would use the smallest, weakest creature in existence. Zeus summoned a single, ordinary gadfly. The tiny insect buzzed through the freezing upper atmosphere, landed right on the flank of Pegasus, and bit down hard. The sudden, sharp pain sent the mythical horse into a violent panic. Pegasus reared back, thrashing against the golden bridle, bucking wildly in the thin air. Bellerophon, the master of war, was completely blindsided by a bug. His grip slipped. The reins tore from his frozen hands. Gravity took over. The fall lasted an eternity. 6,000 meters of free fall. The wind ripped away his titles, his wealth, and his arrogance. He hit the earth with the force of a falling star. By some cruel twist of fate, or perhaps by Zeus's direct calculation, the impact didn't kill him. Instead, it shattered his spine and permanently blinded him. Bellerophon survived, but his life was over. He spent his remaining years crawling blindly across the desolate Allion plain. He was a crippled beggar, avoiding all human contact, slowly chewing on his own misery, a shattered tool discarded by the masters he tried to replace. Back on Olympus, Zeus reviewed the failure. The flawless champion strategy was a mistake. Giving a human absolute physical dominance and an unbroken streak of victory only bred catastrophic arrogance. They forgot they were mortals. They became liabilities. If Olympus wanted to maintain control over the earth, the next generation of heroes needed a total psychological overhaul. The next champion could not be allowed to experience unbroken victory. They had to be kept off balance. The next hero wouldn't get a kingdom or a winged horse. They would get pure trauma. They would be driven to madness, tricked into murdering their own family, and then assigned 12 impossible, humiliating labors just to earn the right to breathe. They would be so crushed by guilt and endless suffering that they would never have the energy to look up and challenge the throne. Zeus looked at his wife, Hera. "Make sure the next one suffers," he ordered. The new champion would be physically unbreakable but psychologically destroyed, and they would name him Heracles. If you want to see exactly how Hera shattered Heracles' mind and turned him into the most tragic weapon in history, hit the subscribe button right now. The true stories of Olympus are just getting started. I'll see you in the next video. Imagine the ultimate royal family facing a violent, bloody coup. The giants are storming the golden gates of Olympus. The gods are actually losing. Zeus throws his massive lightning bolts, but it is not enough. The divine army is getting pushed back to the brink of total collapse. They need a miracle. They need a mortal asset. Enter Heracles. He is the mortal bastard child of Zeus. He steps up onto the burning battlefield, crushes the giants, and saves the divine throne. You would think he gets a medal for this. A permanent seat at the table. a massive divine promotion. Wrong. In the toxic politics of Olympus, showing up the Queen of the Gods is a guaranteed death sentence. Hera is deeply humiliated. A mortal bastard just did exactly what her own pure-blooded gods could not. Her paranoia spikes to an all-time high. To reassert her absolute supremacy, she doesn't just want Heracles dead. Death is far too easy. Death makes him a martyr. She wants him broken. She wants to turn his greatest asset, his unstoppable physical strength, into his eternal curse. But Heracles does not know this. He thinks his military contract with the gods is officially over. He returns down to the mortal realm, to the wealthy, powerful city of Thebes. He marries Princess Megara. They have beautiful children. He builds a comfortable, quiet life based on a massive, fatal assumption. He thinks the gods are fair. Heracles hangs up his heavy weapons. He thinks he is a retired hero. He thinks the ledger is finally balanced. But let's clarify the actual mythological timeline. A mortal asset is never allowed to retire. They are only put on standby. Hera watches from above, letting him get highly comfortable. She lets him deeply love his family. This is a cold, calculated political move. Because you cannot break a man who has nothing to lose. You have to give him the entire world. You let him hold it in his hands. And then, you force him to destroy it himself. Hera waits for the perfect moment. She waits until his guard is completely down. Hera finally strikes. She does not send an army of assassins to his house. That is too straightforward. She sends madness. It sneaks into his brain like a slow-acting poison. One night, Heracles is sitting peacefully by the warm hearth. Megara is laughing with their children. Suddenly, the shadows in the room stretch. The temperature drops to freezing. The faces of his wife and kids warp and twist monstrously. In his infected, hijacked mind, they are no longer his loving family. They are brutal assassins sent by his political enemies. "Get behind me!" Heracles roars, drawing his heavy sword. "I will protect you!" Megara backs away, terrified. "Heracles, put the sword down. You are scaring the children." He doesn't hear her. "I am saving them," he screams. His protective instincts, the exact heroic traits that made him a savior, are inverted and weaponized against him. He attacks the shadows. The guards of the palace hear the terrifying screams, but they cannot stop him. "Lord Heracles, stop! It is your wife!" a loyal guard yells. Heracles backhands the guard through a solid stone wall. How do you restrain the strongest man on earth? You do not. You just hide. When the blood-red mist finally clears from his vision, Heracles drops his sword. The assassins are gone. Megara and his children lie dead on the stone floor, slain by his own hands. Hera didn't just take his family. She made him the murderer. The psychological devastation is absolute. Heracles is a hollow shell of a man. He runs away into the wild, desperate for a way to clean the blood off his fractured soul. He travels to the Oracle of Delphi. "Tell me how to fix this," he pleads, his voice cracking with grief. "I will pay any price. I will fight any war." The Oracle smiles a cold, divine smile. "No wars," she says. "Submit. Surrender your freedom to King Eurystheus for 12 years. King Eurystheus is Heracles' cousin. He is also a weak, paranoid, pathetic ruler who is absolutely terrified of Heracles' power. When Heracles arrives at his royal court, Eurystheus literally hides inside a giant bronze jar buried in the floor. He issues his orders trembling from inside the jar. "You belong to me now," Eurystheus echoes from the dark. "You are my property." Making Heracles his personal slave is the ultimate political humiliation. Eurystheus does not want Heracles to succeed. He wants him dead. So he designs the 12 labors. But let's get one critical thing straight. History gets this completely wrong. These were not grand adventures. They were not glorious quests. They were a targeted execution plan. It was a suicide mission disguised as redemption. Eurystheus points Heracles at the apex predators of the ancient world. These are the natural barriers stopping human expansion. The first target is the Nemean lion. It is a beast with skin that iron weapons cannot pierce. Heracles does not use a sword. He traps it in a dark cave and strangles it to death with his bare hands. Then comes the Lernaean Hydra. This is where the major strategic shift happens. Heracles stops fighting like an honorable hero. He starts fighting like a ruthless mercenary. The Hydra has 9 venomous heads. Cut one off, 2 grow back. "We are losing ground. It is multiplying," screams his nephew, Iolaus, holding a torch in the toxic swamp. "Then burn it," Heracles commands. "Burn the wounds to the ash." As Heracles chops through bone and scale, Iolaus burns the bloody stumps to stop the rapid regeneration. Scorched earth tactics. Then Heracles does something highly illegal in the rules of honorable combat. He dips his arrows into the Hydra's toxic blood. He weaponizes the monster's corpse. He becomes a walking biological weapon himself. Next is the Ceryneian hind, a sacred deer incredibly fast. Heracles doesn't use magic. He just chases it for an entire year. Pure, stubborn, terrifying endurance. He isn't seeking glory. He is working with the cold, dead efficiency of a state exterminator. Then Eurystheus tries to humiliate him with the Augean stables. He orders Heracles to clean 30 years of toxic manure in one day. King Augeas laughs at him. "You, the great savior of Olympus, shoveling my manure?" Heracles doesn't argue. He doesn't pick up a shovel. He literally breaks the banks of 2 massive rushing rivers and violently washes away the stables, the filth, and half the king's property in a single afternoon. He is operating as a blunt instrument of the state, but the true loss of his heroic nobility happens with the mares of Diomedes. King Diomedes owns 4 massive horses that eat human flesh. He feeds his political prisoners to them. A classic hero would slay the horses and spare the king. Not Heracles. He has no time for diplomacy. He rips King Diomedes from his throne and feeds him alive to his own starving horses. The horses eat their master, become calm, and Heracles simply walks away with them. Later, he is sent to steal the belt of the Amazon queen, Hippolyta. It is a pure political mission. Hippolyta actually agrees to give him the belt peacefully. They share a mutual respect as warriors. "Take it," she says. "You have earned it." But Hera disguises herself as an Amazon and spreads a violent rumor that Heracles is kidnapping the queen. The Amazons attack. Heracles, blinded by his own trauma and thinking he was betrayed again, glares at Hippolyta. "Nobody is honest, not even you," he says. He slaughters her and takes the bloody belt. The tragedy is relentless. He trusts no one. He is fully broken. Finally, he walks down into the underworld, looks the god of the dead in the eye, and drags the 3-headed dog, Cerberus, into the mortal sunlight. When Heracles brings the hellhound to the palace, King Eurystheus screams in terror and dives back into his giant bronze jar. He refuses to come out. The 12th labor is officially done. The impossible debt is paid in full. Heracles is technically absolved. His soul is clean. He is a free man. But step back and look at the map. Look at the catastrophic unintended damage he left behind. Before the labors, the map of Greece was wild, untamed, and extremely dangerous. Monsters lurked in every swamp, forest, and mountain pass. These beasts were terrifying, yes, but they served a highly critical political function. They kept the demigods busy. By surviving the execution plan, Heracles accidentally broke the entire mythological world. He eradicated the external threats. The rivers are safe to cross. The forests are clear for logging. Trade routes are wide open for merchants to transport goods. The world is geographically safe for human politics and massive economic expansion. But there is a massive, glaring problem. Let's call it genetic obsolescence. The weapons still exist. The world is now packed with demigods. Men with divine blood, extreme strength, and high violence in their veins. They were genetically bred by the gods to fight monsters. Now, there are no monsters left to fight. So what exactly happens to a highly trained, violently capable military asset when you take away their core mission? They get bored. They get incredibly greedy. The heroic code rots from the inside out. The noble protectors transition into greedy warlords. They form heavily armed gangs. Why protect this weak village for free when we can just conquer it and take their gold? They ask. The violence in the world does not magically stop. It just turns inward. They stop hunting beasts and start hunting each other. They become mercenaries, selling their divine strength to the highest bidding mortal king. This is the brutal, hidden irony of the 12 labors. Heracles cleared the board. He saved humanity from the monsters, only to turn humanity's own heroes into the new monsters. We see the direct political fallout almost immediately in the mythic timeline. The demigods start fighting over mortal politics, trade routes, and stolen wealth. This specific power vacuum leads straight to the bloody civil war known as the Seven Against Thebes, where heroes slaughter each other at the city gates just for a mortal throne. And it sets the ultimate stage for the total destruction of the Trojan War. Hera won. Her revenge was absolute. She didn't just break the savior of Olympus. She used him to completely collapse the heroic age. Removing a shared enemy does not create peace. It just changes the target. If you want to see exactly how these bored, greedy demigods completely burned down the greatest city of the ancient world, hit the subscribe button right now and watch our next video on the real cutthroat politics behind the Trojan War. For thousands of years, the story of Jason and the Argonauts has been sold as the ancient equivalent of the Avengers, a team of superpowered demigods uniting for glory. But this is a lie. The Argo expedition was not a noble quest. It was a heist. It was a ruthless syndicate built for revenge and greed. And it ended in a slaughter so horrifying, it convinced the gods that the entire heroic generation needed to be wiped out. It all starts with a coup and a lot of paranoia. In the city of Iolcos, a man named Peleus steals the throne from his brother. Years later, his nephew Jason shows up, wearing one sandal and demanding his crown. Peleus is a career politician. He doesn't want to hand over his power, so he plays a game of high-stakes redirection. He tells Jason, "You want the throne? Fine. Prove you're a king. Go to the edge of the known world, to the hostile kingdom of Colchis, and bring back the Golden Fleece." The fleece is a divine artifact. It represents ultimate wealth. Peleus knows it's a suicide mission. No one comes back alive from Colchis. But Jason is ambitious. He builds a massive, state-of-the-art ship called the Argo. Then he recruits the absolute deadliest weapons in Greece, 50 demigods. He brings Heracles, the strongest man alive. He brings Atalanta, a peerless sniper. He brings mind readers, wind controllers, and absolute monsters of war. They aren't doing this for justice. They want gold, fame, and a legendary reputation. The voyage is a nightmare. They have to pass through the clashing rocks, massive sea cliffs that smash together like giant teeth. Most captains would turn back, but the Argonauts use a bird as a scout. They wait for the rocks to snap shut on the bird's tail, and then they row like possessed men during the reset. They barely make it, the rocks clipping the back of their ship. This is the first sign. These men aren't heroes. They are gamblers. When they finally reach Colchis, the Greek brute force hits a brick wall. King Oedipus mocks them. He says, "You can have the fleece. Just yoke 2 fire-breathing bulls with bronze hooves, plow a field, and plant the teeth of a dragon." The Argonauts freeze. This is a critical moment. The greatest warriors on Earth are completely useless. Heracles steps forward, but the bulls are literal furnaces. Their breath melts bronze. If Heracles gets close, he's charbroiled. Atalanta draws her bow, but her arrows would simply vanish in the heat. Brute force cannot beat ancient magic. The legendary Greek syndicate is paralyzed. They are far from home, outgunned, and about to fail. But from the palace balcony, a teenager is watching. Her name is Medea. She is the king's daughter, and she is a priestess of Hecate. She is a master of dark magic, lethal toxins, and psychological warfare. Thanks to a little push from the love goddess Aphrodite, Medea becomes obsessed with Jason. She corners him in secret. She offers him a treasonous deal. "I will make you survive," Medea tells him. "I will give you the secrets to win. But in exchange, you swear to the gods that you will take me away and make me your queen." Jason looks at this terrifying, powerful girl and agrees instantly. He sees a solution to his problem. He swears absolute loyalty. From this moment on, the mighty Greek heroes do absolutely nothing. Medea takes over. She hands Jason a magical ointment made from the blood of Prometheus. "Rub this on your skin," she says. "The fire cannot touch you." Jason walks up to the bulls. They blast him with white-hot flame, but he doesn't even flinch. He yokes them and plows the field. Then, he plants the dragon teeth. Immediately, an army of undead skeletal warriors erupts from the dirt, but Medea already gave him the win. "Do not fight them," she warned. "They have no minds. Throw a heavy stone into the middle of the crowd." Jason throws a boulder. The skeletons think they are being attacked by each other. They turn their swords inward. In minutes, the undead army hacks itself to pieces. Jason wins the trial. But King Aetes is furious. He realizes his daughter has betrayed him. He orders his army to burn the Greek ship and slaughter the Argonauts at dawn. The heist is falling apart. Medea realizes she has to burn her own life to save Jason. She leads him to the sacred grove where a massive dragon that never sleeps is coiled around the fleece. Medea steps forward and begins chanting a dark, hypnotic lullaby. She drops liquid poison made from black herbs into the dragon's eyes until the monster collapses. Jason just steps over the beast and pulls the fleece from the tree. They run to the ship and set sail, but the extraction turns into a bloodbath. The Colchian navy pursues them, led by Medea's own brother Apsyrtus. The Greeks are trapped. So Medea commits her first true atrocity. She tricks her brother into a secret meeting on a deserted island. As he walks toward her, Jason steps out from the shadows and murders him in cold blood. Then, to ensure their escape, Medea chops her brother's body into pieces and throws the remains into the ocean. She knows her father is a man of tradition. He will have to stop the entire navy to collect every piece of his son for a proper burial. It is a sickening, highly effective move. The Greeks watch this from the deck of the Argo in absolute horrified silence. Heracles, who has killed countless monsters, looks at this teenage girl with genuine fear. Here's the thing. The Argonauts weren't shocked because it was murder. They were shocked because they realized they were just the sidekicks in Medea's horror movie. They have the fleece, but their heroic illusion is gone. They return to Iolcos. Jason drops the fleece at his uncle's feet. "I did it," Jason says. "Now give me my throne." Peleus just laughs. "The fleece is nice," Peleus says, "but I have the army. Get out." Jason is impotent again, and once again he looks at Medea to fix it. Medea walks into the palace and finds Peleus's daughters. She tells them, "I have a magic spell that can reverse aging. I can make your father a young man again." To prove it, she takes an old, dying ram. She chops it into pieces and boils it in a cauldron with magical herbs. Suddenly, a tiny young lamb jumps out of the steam. The daughters are amazed. That night, they go to their father's bed. Desperate to save him from old age, they cut their own father to pieces and throw him into Medea's boiling cauldron. Medea just stands there watching the bubbles. There is no spell. The daughters have just murdered the king. It is a brilliant, ruthless assassination, but it backfires. The citizens of Iolcos are disgusted by the butchery. They don't crown Jason. They run him out of town. The syndicate dissolves in shame. Jason and Medea are forced to flee to Corinth as disgraced refugees. 10 years pass. Medea has given Jason 2 sons. She has sacrificed everything for him, but Jason is a creature of status. He's tired of being a refugee. The king of Corinth approaches him with a deal. "Marry my daughter, Princess Gloss," the king says. "You'll be the heir to my throne, but you have to get rid of the witch." Jason makes the most arrogant logic error in history. He accepts. He walks up to Medea and says, "I'm divorcing you. I'm marrying the princess tomorrow." Medea stares at him. "I killed my brother for you," she says. "I killed your uncle for you. I gave you everything." Jason just shrugs. "Medea, be reasonable. It's just politics, don't be emotional. I'm doing this so our kids can have royal connections. You're a foreigner, a barbarian. You're lucky I'm even letting you stay in the city." He treats the most dangerous woman in the ancient world like a bad habit. Medea does not cry. She does not beg. She realizes her entire life was a lie, and she decides that simply killing Jason is not enough. Death is a release. She wants him to suffer for eternity. Medea crafts a stunning golden wedding gown. She laces the fabric with a volatile poison. She sends it to the new princess as a peace offering. The princess, vain and happy, puts the dress on. The second the silk touches her skin, it ignites into a magical fire. The poison melts the flesh from her bones. The king of Corinth rushes in and grabs his daughter to save her. The poison transfers to his skin. They both melt into a puddle of ash and bone on the palace floor. But Medea is not finished. She needs to ensure Jason has no future, no legacy. She walks into the nursery. She looks at her two sons. She knows that if she leaves them, the people of Corinth will kill them anyway. She draws a knife. "It is better that I, who gave them life, should take it," she whispers. She executes her own children. When Jason finally reaches the palace, the bride is ash and his children are dead. Medea is already gone. She escapes into the sky in a chariot pulled by dragons, leaving Jason kneeling in the blood of his own ambition. "You monster!" he screams at the sky. But Medea just looks down. "The pain is mine as well," she says. "But it is worth it to see you broken." Jason's life is over. He has no throne, no wife, no kids. He wanders the earth as a beggar, a ghost of a man. Decades later, an old man, he returns to the beach where the rotting Argo is propped up. He sits in the shadow of the ship, remembering the day he thought he was a god. Suddenly, a rotting beam snaps and crushes his skull. The great hero dies a meaningless, pathetic death, killed by the wreckage of his own past. From the summit of Olympus, Zeus watched the entire catastrophe. He saw that the demigods were no longer protectors. They were weaponized tools of greed and vengeance. They were destabilizing the mortal world. They were a failed experiment. Zeus realized the heroic age was a failure. It was time for a purge. It was time for a war so massive it would wipe these corrupted heroes from the face of the earth. A war that would start with a golden apple and end with the burning of Troy. The gods began moving the pieces into place. The bloodlines of the heroes were about to be shut down permanently. If you want to see the dark truth about how the gods planned the Trojan War to wipe the slate clean, hit that subscribe button right now. Comment reset below if you're ready for the final war. I'll see you in the next myth. King Oeneus forgot one thing, one name, and it didn't just cost him a crop, it cost him his entire bloodline. It was harvest season in Calydon. The king was throwing the feast of the century. He poured wine for Zeus. He burned fat for Hera. He gave a shout out to every god on Olympus, except one, Artemis, the goddess of the hunt. In ancient Greece, the gods weren't just spirits. They were a dysfunctional royal family with the power of the sun. And Artemis? She was the most prideful of them all. To her, a missed prayer wasn't a mistake. It was a declaration of war. She didn't send an army. She didn't send a plague. She sent a nightmare. A 2,000-pound engine of destruction. The Caledonian boar. This wasn't a pig. It was a divine biological weapon. Its eyes glowed with a sick red light. Its tusks were the size of swords. It didn't just eat the crops, it uprooted the economy. It slaughtered the livestock. It turned the vineyards into a graveyard. The king was paralyzed. His governance had created a crisis he couldn't solve. He was losing his kingdom because he forgot to say thank you. This is a classic leadership failure. Oeneus thought he was saving time by skipping the ritual. Instead, he created a spite debt that his son would have to pay with interest. If you're going to run a kingdom, you don't ignore the person who controls the food supply. You don't leave a power vacuum when a goddess is watching your borders. The king's son, Meleager, saw the kingdom bleeding. He realized his father was a liability. He stepped in and sent a message across the world. The boar is killing my people. Whoever kills it gets the glory and the hide. This was the Avengers of the Bronze Age. Jason, the leader of the Argonauts, arrived. Castor and Pollux, the divine twins, showed up. These were men who lived for status. But then, the atmosphere changed. A woman walked into the palace. Atalanta. She was a huntress raised by bears. She was faster, sharper, and colder than any man in the room. The reaction was immediate. Meleager's uncles, Plexippus and Toxius, were disgusted. They were the queen's brothers, the old guard. To them, a woman joining the hunt was an insult to their legacy. If she stays, we leave, Toxus growled, his hand on his sword. Our honor doesn't mix with hers. A woman has no place in a hunt for kings. Meleager looked at them. He didn't see family. He saw obsolete thinkers. She stays, he said. The boar doesn't care about your tradition. It only cares about who hits it first. If you want the glory, go earn it. This was Meleager's first strategic gamble. He chose merit over nepotism. In a crisis, that's the right move. But in a royal family, that's how you start a civil war. He was prioritizing the mission, but he was ignoring the political cost of wounding the pride of the people who held the keys to his palace. Before the hunt, there was a 9-day feast. This was a tactical disaster. 9 days of drinking, 9 days of the uncles mocking Atalanta. Are we here to hunt or to babysit? Toxius laughed, spilling wine on the table. Meleager, are you so weak you need a girl to protect you? Maybe she can stay behind and cook the meat once we actually do the work. Atalanta didn't say a word. She sharpened her arrows. Meleager's jaw was set. He was falling for her skill, but his uncles were digging a grave for the family. The king sat at the head of the table, silent. He didn't realize that a divided team is more dangerous than any monster. On day 10, they marched into the deep woods. It was a suffocating thicket. The boar didn't wait for them. It charged. It moved like a boulder falling down a mountain. Within the first minute, the elite were screaming. A hero named Ancaeus stepped forward to show off. "Watch a real man work," he shouted. The boar's tusk went through his body before he could even raise his spear. Then came the panic. Peleus, the future father of Achilles, threw his spear at the beast but missed, and killed his own teammate instead. The high-performance team was falling apart because they had no discipline. Only ego. Look at the logic here. The boar didn't have a plan, but the heroes didn't have a leader. Meleager was a great warrior, but he failed as a manager. He allowed the internal friction to turn into a lethal liability. The heroes were failing. They were hitting trees, hitting each other, and running for their lives. Then, a single arrow hissed through the air. Thwack! It buried itself right behind the boar's ear. Blood sprayed. The beast staggered. Everyone froze. The arrow belonged to Atalanta. The old guard was humiliated. They charged in blindly, desperate to reclaim their status. But it was Meleager who saw the opening. He drove his spear into the boar's flank, finding the heart. The 2,000-pound nightmare collapsed. The hunt was over. But the war was just beginning. Meleager stood over the carcass. By the law of the hunt, he held the trophy, the massive hide and the head. This was the ultimate status symbol. Meleager looked at the skin. Then he looked at Atalanta. "The prize is yours," he announced. You drew first blood. Without that arrow, we'd all be dead. You are the true victor of Calydon." The silence was deafening. His uncle stepped forward. "Absolutely not," Plexippus growled. "The law says the prize stays with the bloodline. It goes to us. You are not giving our family's glory to a girl from the woods. This is our land. This is our kill." They grabbed the hide. They pushed Atalanta aside. They were asserting blood rights over merit. This was the breaking point. The uncles were protecting their brand equity, but they were doing it by robbing the person who actually did the work. Meleager had to choose, his family's greed or his own integrity. He was a prince trying to build a future, but his family was anchored in the past. Meleager's vision went red. He had spent 9 days listening to these men. He had watched them fail in the field. He saw them as parasites eating his kingdom's future. "Give it back to her," Meleager said. His voice was like grinding stones. "Make us, boy," Toxius laughed. "You're a prince, but we are your elders. We are the policy. We are the family. You would not dare raise a hand against your own blood." Meleager didn't argue. He didn't call a council. He drew his blade and drove it through Toxius's chest. Before Plexippus could even scream, Meleager's sword found his throat too. In 10 seconds, the two most powerful men in Calydon were dead, butchered by their own nephew in front of the greatest heroes of Greece. The hunt for the boar had officially turned into a coup against the family. News traveled to the palace faster than the hunters. Queen Althea, Meleager's mother, was waiting to celebrate. She expected a hero. Instead, she saw 2 carts carrying the bodies of her brothers. She didn't cry. She went cold. She looked at the blood on her son's hands, and she didn't see a savior. She saw a traitor who had liquidated his own blood for a stranger. She walked to her private chambers and opened a locked, heavy chest. Inside was the mortal asset. Meleager committed the ultimate sin of the heroic age, fratricide. He solved a short-term problem, the hide, with a long-term disaster, the murder of his kinsman. He forgot that in a monarchy, family is the only infrastructure you have. To understand what happened next, we have to go back 20 years. When Meleager was 7 days old, the 3 fates, the women who managed the destiny of the world, appeared in Althea's room. They pointed to a piece of wood burning in the fireplace. "Your son will live," they said, "only as long as that log remains unburned." Althea had reacted like a true owner. She snatched the log from the fire, put it out with water, and locked it away. For 20 years, her son's life was a physical object in a box. She had protected him with that log. She had saved his life every single day by not burning it. But now, the value of her son had plummeted. He had murdered her brothers. He had destroyed her family legacy. In her mind, the debt of blood had to be paid. She walked to the hearth. She built a massive fire. She looked at the charred, half-burnt log. "You were my son," she whispered, "but they were my brothers. You have severed the cord. Now, I will burn the brand." She threw the mortal asset into the flames. This is the ultimate emotional reversal. The woman who gave him life became his executioner. It shows that in a world of high-stakes honor, family is a resource that can be spent just as easily as gold. Althea didn't just kill her son. She closed the account of the Caledonian dynasty. She chose the ghosts of her brothers over the future of her child. Miles away, Meleager was marching home. He was holding Atalanta's hand. He was planning his future. He felt like the strongest man in the world. Suddenly, he gasped. It started as a warmth in his chest, then a searing heat. He clutched his stomach. His skin began to redden. There was no fire around him. No enemy was attacking. Yet he was burning from the inside out. His lungs felt like they were filled with boiling oil. He fell to his knees, screaming in an agony that no medicine could touch. "I'm on fire!" he roared. But there was no smoke, only the smell of his own skin charring from within. Back at the palace, the log was turning to white ash. As the last sliver of wood vanished into the fire, Meleager's heart stopped. He died in the dirt, his body smoking, miles from the mother who had just deleted him. The tragedy wasn't over. When the fire died down, the reality hit Althea. She had killed her only child. The grief was a second monster, worse than the boar. She took a blade and ended her own life. The king, seeing his wife, his son, and his brothers all dead, went into a catatonic shock. He sat on a throne in an empty palace, ruling over a graveyard. Hebor was dead. The mission was a success, but the leadership team was 100% liquidated. They spent all their resources killing the monster, but they forgot to manage the human cost. This is what happens when you win the war but lose the peace. This wasn't just a family fight. It was a structural collapse. Calydon was one of the strongest kingdoms in Greece. Overnight, it became an empty house. The neighboring kings didn't see heroes. They saw a power vacuum. The hunt that destroyed a family successfully cleared the board for the next generation of tyrants. It proved that the heroic age was built on a flaw. The heroes were too volatile to manage. Their egos were a greater threat than any monster the gods could invent. The lesson? In any high-stakes environment, your biggest threat isn't the external monster, it's the internal friction. If you don't manage your family assets, you end up like Calydon, a graveyard with a dead pig in the middle. If you want to see how other elite teams like the Argonauts bankrupted themselves through bad ego management, hit that subscribe button. We're deconstructing the logic of the gods every week. Comment below. Was Meleager right to choose Atalanta over his family, or was this the ultimate management fail? Was Althea a monster or a victim of her own code? I want to see your logic. The monster is dead, but the throne is empty. Who's moving in next? Thanks for watching. Stay sharp. Don't forget to check your mortal assets. Imagine the slow horror of feeling your living flesh turn cold as stone. It begins in the backs of your legs, a numb weight creeping upward, as though the chair beneath you has awakened and closed its grip. You try to rise, but you cannot. Your skin no longer parts from the rock. It clings to it. It belongs to it. The stone of the underworld is drinking you in. You are Theseus. You are the slayer of the Minotaur. You are the breaker of roads and bandits. You are the king who gathered Athens beneath one hand. And now you are becoming part of a chair in the house of Hades. No lash falls on you. No flame consumes you. There is only stillness. That is the cruelty of it. The Lord of the Dead did not need chains. He did not need thunder. He only offered rest. And Theseus, who had long believed that no snare could hold him, accepted the gift and sat. This was the root of his ruin. Theseus was not only brave, he was a man who trusted his own judgment too deeply. Even in youth, when he walked the road to Athens, he did not merely overcome the killers he met there. He answered each one in his own fashion. The pine bender was bent, the robber was robbed, the cruel were paid back in the coin they had minted for others. It was not enough for Theseus to prevail. He wished to show that he understood the game better than those who played it. But even in greatness, the shadow was already there. We see it most clearly after his brightest triumph. Theseus entered Crete, slew the Minotaur, and carried the sons and daughters of Athens out of the labyrinth alive. He had done what no man before him had done. He had taken death by the throat and returned victorious. Then he sailed for home. His father, King Aegis, had been given one sign by which to know his son still lived. The black sail of mourning was to be replaced with white. But the white sail was never raised. Whether through grief, forgetfulness, or pride, the sign did not change. And when Aegis saw the black sail from afar, despair seized him. He cast himself from the cliff into the sea that now bears his name. So Theseus came home, not only as a victor, but as a son standing in the shadow of his father's death. Then he took the throne, and as king, he was mighty. He drew the scattered peoples of Attica toward Athens. He strengthened the city. He enlarged its name. He gave order where there had been division. These were no small deeds, but there is a danger that follows men who conquer too often. When every trial is yielded before them, they begin to mistake good fortune for destiny, and destiny for permission. A man who has overcome monsters may at last begin to believe that no law was made for him. This is where Theseus changed. He was said to be a son of Poseidon as well as of mortal blood, and perhaps he began to think more on the divine half than the human one. The earth no longer seemed enough for his ambition. The daughters of kings were no longer enough for his desire. He and his companion Perseus made a vow as proud as it was foolish. They would take for wives only daughters of Zeus. Such words should have been taken as an omen. Their first outrage was Helen of Sparta, still a child, not yet the woman whose face would one day launch 1,000 ships. Theseus seized her and hid her away at Aphidnae, as though her life were a prize to be stored until the season suited him. This alone tells the measure of the man he had become. He was no longer acting as a guardian of his people, nor even as a hero hungry for renown. He was reaching beyond mortal custom itself. He was laying hands on bloodlines, on houses, on sacred order, as if the world were his to arrange. But while Theseus dreamed of heights fit for gods, the world of men did not stand still. Helen's brothers, Castor and Pollux, came for her with force. They did not bow before Theseus's fame. They did not fear the stories told of him. They came as brothers, as avengers, and as princes with an army at their backs. Yet even then, with danger rising against his own house, Theseus turned his mind toward something still more terrible. Perseus had chosen his bride, Persephone, queen of the dead. To speak such a plan aloud was madness. To attempt it was blasphemy. For this was no mortal queen shut behind city walls. This was the wife of Hades. To reach her, they would have to descend beneath the earth, pass into the kingdom from which no man returns unchanged, and stretch out their hands in theft against one of the oldest powers in the world. And Theseus agreed. Why should he not? He had broken the road. He had escaped the labyrinth. He had ruled a kingdom. Men like Theseus are never destroyed by failure first. They are destroyed by success. Victory teaches them a lesson more dangerous than defeat ever could, that the next forbidden thing may also yield. So the two of them went down into the underworld, and the descent was quiet. No army met them. No cry rose against them. There was only the smell of damp earth, the cold breath of the deep places, and the sound of their own footsteps moving where living men were not meant to walk. At last they came before Hades, and Hades did not rage. That is what makes the moment so dreadful. He did not leap from his throne like a beast. He did not answer insult with noise. He received them in stillness, heard their impossible demand, and then offered them seats. "Sit," he said, as a host might speak to weary travelers. "You have come far. Rest yourselves, and let us speak." And Theseus sat. The trap did not spring with iron teeth or sudden violence. It worked more cruelly than that. The moment Theseus settled his weight upon the stone, the chair took hold of him. First came the cold, then the heaviness, then the slow and dreadful knowledge that he could no longer rise. But the punishment of Hades was not only of the body, it was of memory also. Athens began to fade from him. The faces he had known grew dim. The name of his mother drifted away. The father whose death lay upon his story became a shadow. Even the thread of the labyrinth, that sign of wit and deliverance, seemed to fray and vanish in the dark corners of his mind. The man who had trusted most in his own cleverness was now being emptied of himself. And still the stone climbed into him. His flesh bound itself to the seat. His limbs lost their freedom. Across from him, Perseus too was being claimed, sinking into the doom he had called upon with his own desire. Time ceased to mean anything there. Days may have passed, or years. In the halls of the dead, it is all one. Theseus remained in darkness, half man and half monument, watching the shades drift by like smoke. And while he sat below the earth, his kingdom unraveled above it. Helen was rescued. Attica was struck. His enemies moved. His people were left without the king who should have stood for them. This was the deepest shame of all. Theseus had not fallen while defending Athens. He had abandoned the living in order to seize what no mortal had the right to seize. At last, deliverance came, but not as mercy. It came because another hero entered that realm on another labor. Heracles had descended to seize Cerberus, and in that dark kingdom, he found Theseus fixed to the chair, a broken remnant of his former greatness. Not a king, not a conqueror, only a warning. Heracles did not plead. He did not search for hidden words or secret laws. He took Theseus by the arms and pulled. What followed was agony. The stone did not wish to release its prisoner. Flesh tore, skin ripped away. The bond between man and rock broke only by violence. Heracles dragged him free, but not whole. Theseus rose from that chair maimed, bloodied, and diminished. Part of him remained behind forever in the house of Hades. So he returned to the upper world, but not in triumph. The city he had once ruled did not receive him as a savior. Too much had been broken. Too much had been abandoned. A king may return from war in glory, but a king who leaves his people for his own pride returns to a colder welcome. Theseus found no old greatness waiting for him, only the ruins of it. In the end, his last road led to Skyros. Driven from Athens, stripped of the authority he once wore so easily, Theseus fled to the island and sought refuge with King Lycomedes. There, far from the city whose fate had once rested in his hands, the old hero had become a dangerous guest, a fallen man whose name was greater than his power. One day he stood upon the cliffs above the sea. Perhaps he was looking toward home. Perhaps he was looking toward the past. Perhaps he was thinking, too late, on all that had slipped through his hands. And there Lycomedes pushed him. Theseus fell from the height and was shattered on the rocks below, dying beside the water, alone. The end was fitting in the cruel way myths often are. Years earlier, his father had died by the sea because of the black sail that Theseus failed to change. Now Theseus too was claimed by stone and height and water, as though the pattern of his own life had at last closed over him. This is why Theseus matters. Not only because he slew monsters, not only because he built a kingdom, but because he shows what happens when a great man begins to think himself more than mortal. The moment Theseus believed he stood above human law, human duty, and human measure, his fall had already begun. He reached down into the realm of death to seize a goddess, and death answered by seating him in silence, until pride itself became stone. And even as his body vanished into the surf, another ending was drawing near. Heracles was nearing the last of his labors. The age of heroes was beginning to consume itself. If you want to see the moment that age truly breaks, then the next story belongs to Heracles. The strongest man who ever lived did not die in battle. He died screaming on a mountain, clawing at a shirt that had become his own skin. Before the kings of Greece began to sharpen their spears, before the age of heroes collapsed into a century of blood, there was only the sound of a man trying to rip the muscle from his own bones. Heracles, the son of Zeus, the man who had throttled the lion and out-wrestled death itself, was finally meeting a monster he could not kill. It was a monster he had slaughtered 20 years before, a ghost hidden in a vial of old blood, waiting for the hero to grow old enough to be vulnerable. This is how the shield of the world was broken, not by a giant's club, but by a wife's fear and a centaur's lie. To understand the fall, you must first understand the weight of the man. For 12 years, Heracles had walked the earth as the undisputed law. He was the barrier between the hearth and the night. As long as he breathed, the monsters stayed in the deep woods and the kings stayed on their thrones, trembling. His final labor took him to a place where even the sun is afraid to go. He was commanded to descend into the gray silence of the underworld and bring back the beast that guards the gate, Cerberus. He did not go with a prayer. He went with a club. In the sunless air of Hades, where the breath of the dead smells like wet stone, he found his friend Theseus. The king of Athens had been caught trying to steal a goddess, and as punishment, He had been fused to the rock of forgetfulness. His flesh had grown into the mountain. His mind was a white fog. Heracles did not ask the Lord of the Dead for a reprieve. He simply gripped Theseus by the shoulders and pulled. He ignored the screaming of the stone. He ripped the king from the rock, leaving strips of Theseus's living skin still clinging to the granite. It was a message to the gods. Your laws are made of straw when I choose to break them. He then throttled the three-headed hound until its tongues turned black and dragged the nightmare into the blinding light of the upper world. He was the master of all things. He was the shield, and he believed his own myth. But a man who builds his life on violence leaves a debt in the soil. Years earlier, during a journey with his bride Deianira, Heracles reached the banks of the river Evenus. The waters were high and angry. A centaur named Nessus, a creature of bone and horsehair and wild hunger, offered to carry Deianira across on his back while Heracles swam. Halfway across the torrent, the beast's nature took hold. Nessus galloped for the opposite shore, intending to steal the woman for himself. Heracles did not shout. He did not plead. He drew an arrow from his quiver. A shaft dipped in the black, boiling gall of the Lernaean Hydra. He fired. The arrow tore through the centaur's ribs, its venom instantly turning the creature's blood into acid. As Nessus fell into the river mud, his lungs filling with fire, he looked at Deianira with a dying grin. He saw her fear of Heracles' wandering heart. "Take my cloak," the centaur hissed, his voice a rattle of blood. "It is soaked in my gore. If the son of Zeus ever turns his heart from you, give him this garment. My blood is a charm of love. It will bind him to you forever." Deianira, blinded by the shadow of her husband's greatness, gathered the poisoned silt into a vial. She did not see the irony. She did not know that the Hydra's venom, the very poison Heracles had used to conquer the world, was now waiting in a dark jar for its turn to conquer him. For a long time, the shield held. Heracles moved from city to city, a storm in human form. He leveled palaces. He took what he wanted. He forgot the river. He forgot the centaur. But the world does not forget. The reckoning broke when Heracles returned from the sack of Oechalia. He did not come alone. He brought with him a beautiful captive, a princess named Iole. When the news reached Deianira, she saw her life dissolving. She saw the hero's eyes turning toward a younger flame. In the silence of her chamber, she reached for the vial. She took a fine, woven tunic, a gift for a husband returning from war. She soaked the wool in the centaur's black remains. She did not notice that the fabric hissed as it drank the fluid. She sent it to the coast, where Heracles was preparing a great sacrifice to his father, Zeus. She thought she was weaving a bond of love. She was weaving a shroud. The sun was high over the cliffs of Cenaeum. Heracles stood before the stone altar, surrounded by the smoke of 100 bulls. He was at the peak of his majesty, a god in all but name. He cast off his traveling cloak and donned the gift from his wife. The wool was soft against his back. He felt the weight of his father's favor. Then he stepped toward the sacrificial fires. As the heat of the flames touched the tunic, the venom awoke. The Hydra's blood, dormant for decades, reacted to the warmth. In an instant, the shirt did not just burn, it fused. The wool became one with the hero's muscle. The poison began to digest his meat. Heracles reached back to rip the garment away, but it did not come alone. It brought away great strips of his shoulders. It tore the flesh from his ribs, exposing the white gleam of his bones to the salt air. The scream that left his throat was not human. It was the sound of a mountain breaking. His men fled in terror. The messenger who had brought the shirt, a boy named Lycus, cowered in the rocks. Heracles, driven mad by a pain that no mortal medicine could touch, seized the boy by the ankles. He swung him like a flail, smashing his head against the jagged coast until the boy's brains were washed away by the tide. But the fire inside him would not go out. The Hydra's venom was a living rot. It was an agony born of the storm. a white-hot lightning of the nerves that pulsed with every heartbeat. Because of his divine blood, his body refused to die. He was trapped in a cage of his own indestructible meat, being burned alive by his first victory. He realized then that he was not being punished for a mistake. He was being harvested by his past. He turned his back on the sea and began to climb. He dragged his dying body up the slopes of Mount Oeta, leaving a trail of black, smoking blood on the grass. Miles away, in the silent halls of the palace, Deianira heard the news of the sacrifice. She heard of the shirt, the screams, and the blood on the rocks. She did not weep. She did not offer an excuse. She walked into her inner chamber, looked upon the bed they had shared, and sought the mercy of the blade. She died in the silence of her own shame, leaving the world to burn without her. On the summit of Oeta, the strongest man alive became a laborer once more. With his bare, scorched hands, he tore ancient oaks from the earth. He piled them high, building a pyre that looked like a throne. He lay upon the wood, his skin turning to charcoal, his breath a whistle of steam. He begged for the mercy of the flame. Finally, a youth named Perseus struck the flint. As the flames rose, the sky split open. Zeus did not stop the fire. He finished it. A bolt of blinding lightning struck the pyre with the force of a falling star. In that single violent stroke, the mortal weight of Heracles was vaporized. The heavy clay of his mother, the parts of him that could feel pain and sin, were burned away into ash. What remained was the spirit, the pure golden ichor of a god. Heracles ascended into the thunder, taking his seat among the immortals. But as the god rose, the earth grew cold. The news of the pyre on Mount Oeta moved through the Greek world like a winter wind. The kings who had hidden in their high halls for decades stepped out onto their balconies. They looked at the empty horizon and felt a new, dangerous freedom. The shield was gone. The man who could break a city with his hands was no longer watching. Without Heracles to maintain the silence, the old grudges woke up. The long silence of the kings died that day, replaced by the sound of hammers on bronze. Within a generation, the sons of the hero were being hunted like dogs, and the great kingdoms he had protected were sharpening their spears for a civil war that would burn the world to the ground. Heracles had cleared the path of monsters, but he left behind a race of men who had forgotten how to fear the law. He became a god, but he left behind a ruin. And if you want to see how quickly the world falls apart once the protector is gone, the next story belongs to the kings who tried to fill his shadow. Thebes was choking on its own dead. There were no invading armies outside the walls. No siege engines battered the gates. The killer was in the soil, in the water, and in the very breath of the people. Livestock rotted in the fields before they could be slaughtered. Women brought forth life only to find it cold and still. The pyres burned day and night, turning the noon sky into a thick gray shroud of wood smoke and human ash. On the palace steps, the people collapsed in the heat. They did not pray to the gods. They prayed to their king, Oedipus. He had saved them once. Years ago, he had arrived as a wanderer with nothing but his wits. He had stood before the Sphinx, the winged terror that had strangled their city, and solved the riddle that had killed 100 men. For that brilliance, the people had given him everything. They gave him the crown of the dead King Laius. They gave him the hand of the widowed queen Jocasta. He was their savior. He was the man who saw what others could not. But how does a savior become a curse? How does a man unknowingly forge the chains of his own doom? And what is the true cost of an empty throne? This is the story of a king who hunted a monster, only to discover the tracks he followed were his own. As the ash fell like gray snow upon his shoulders, Oedipus tasted the ash of his own city on his tongue. He had already sent his wife's brother, Creon, to the oracle at Delphi. He would not sit in silence while his city turned into a graveyard. When the prince returned, he brought a message that cut through the lamentations of the crowd like a blade. The gods were not angry at the people. They were disgusted by a presence. Thebes was suffering from miasma, a spiritual rot caused by an unsolved murder. The man who had slaughtered the old king, Laius, was living unpunished within the city walls. Until that blood debt was paid in exile or death, the earth would continue to vomit up the dead. Standing before the gasping crowd, Oedipus did not hesitate. He stepped forward, his voice cold and absolute. He pronounced a curse upon the unknown killer. He swore that the murderer would be cut off from every hearth, denied every ritual, and cast out into a life of wandering misery. He invoked the gods to witness his word. He would hunt this man as if he were hunting his own father. It was a blood oath, a heavy chain of bronze forged by his own tongue. He did not know he had just laid the stones of his own tomb. To find the truth, the king first summoned a man who lived in darkness. Oedipus sent for Tiresias, the oldest seer in Greece. The prophet was led in by a young boy, his eyes milky and dead, but his mind tuned to the whispers of the birds and the heavy movements of the fates. When Oedipus demanded the name of the killer, the old man recoiled. He begged to be sent home. He told the king that some truths are better left in the dark, and that to know is to perish. Oedipus, driven by the urgency of the dying, mistook the prophet's fear for treason. He mocked the old man's blindness. He accused him of conspiring with Creon to steal the throne. He boasted that while the great seer sat silent, it was Oedipus, the man of intellect, who had solved the riddle of the Sphinx. Pushed by the king's arrogance, Tiresias let the truth scream. "You call me blind," the prophet whispered, his voice trembling with a terrifying weight. "But you, with your 2 eyes, cannot see where you are standing. You do not know whose bed you sleep in. You do not know whose blood is on your hands. You are the killer you seek. You are the rot in the heart of Thebes." Oedipus laughed. It was the laugh of a man who believed the world was a puzzle he had already solved. He was a prince of Corinth, the son of King Polybus. He had fled his home years ago because an oracle told him he was destined to murder his father and sleep with his mother. By leaving Corinth, he believed he had outsmarted the gods. He believed he owed nothing to the heavens, only to the brutal force of his own mind. He dismissed Tiresias as a madman and a fraud. But as the prophet was led away, his final words hung in the air like the smell of ozone before a storm. He told the king that by the time the sun set, the murderer of Laius would be revealed as both brother and father to his own children, and a son to the woman he called his wife. Oedipus retreated into the shadowed halls of the palace. The stone foundation of his throne had begun to crack. His wife, Queen Jocasta, found him pacing. Jocasta waved away the prophecy like smoke, declaring the gods fickle and their messengers liars. "Listen to me," she said, her voice calm and maternal. "An oracle once told my first husband, Laius, that he would be killed by his own son. But we took that child when he was 3 days old, pinned his ankles together, and left him on a desolate mountain to die. And Laius? He wasn't killed by a son. He was slaughtered by a band of foreign robbers at a place where 3 roads meet." The blood drained from the king's face. The torchlight in the hall seemed to dim. "Where 3 roads meet?" he asked. He pressed her for the exact location, the cut of the old king's face, the number of guards at his side. With every detail she offered, the invisible weight of the curse settled upon his chest. Years ago, on his journey away from Corinth, Oedipus had reached a narrow pass where 3 paths converged. A royal chariot had forced him off the narrow track. An old man inside had struck him across the face with a double-pointed goad. In a flash of high, unyielding pride, Oedipus had struck back. He didn't just defend himself. He slaughtered them. He killed the old man. He killed the guards. He left them in the dust and walked on toward Thebes, confident in his strength. The fatal symmetry of his life finally locked into place. If that old man was Laius, then Oedipus was the regicide. He was the man who had brought the plague. But there was still a flickering hope. Jocasta had said a band of robbers killed the king. Oedipus had been alone. If the lone survivor of the attack, an old shepherd, stood by his story of multiple killers, then Oedipus was innocent of this at least. He sent for the shepherd. Before the guards could return, the gods delivered a false reprieve. A messenger from Corinth climbed the palace steps. He brought news that felt, for one brief moment, like a total victory over fate. Polybus, the king of Corinth, was dead of old age. The invisible weight of the oracle shattered and fell from Oedipus's shoulders. He had not killed his father. The prophecy was a lie. The world was rational again. But the messenger, wanting to settle the king's lingering fears, offered one more detail. You need not fear your mother either, Oedipus. Polybus was not your father. I was the one who gave you to him. I was a shepherd then, on the slopes of Mount Cithaeron. Another man handed me a baby with pierced ankles, and I brought that child to the palace of Corinth to be raised as a prince. The silence that followed was absolute. Jocasta, standing in the shadows behind her husband, felt the stone floor turn to ice beneath her feet. She knew that mountain. She knew the man who had been ordered to leave her child there. The truth did not arrive like a slow dawn. It locked into place like the iron teeth of a gate. The stranger at the crossroads. The baby from the mountain. The widowed queen. She turned to Oedipus, her face a mask of white marble. She begged him to stop. She told him that for the sake of his soul, he must never ask another question. But Oedipus was a solver of riddles. He was a man of the light. He would not live in a house of shadows. I must know who I am, he barked. Jocasta looked at him one last time, not as a wife looks at a king, but as a mother looks at a doomed son. Without a word, she turned and walked into the private chambers of the palace. The old shepherd was brought in. He was ancient, his face carved by decades of sun and mountain wind, his eyes darting with the terror of a man who has kept a secret for a lifetime. Oedipus did not use logic now. He used iron. He ordered his guards to twist the old man's arms behind his back. He threatened him with fire. The shepherd broke. He confessed. He had been given the child by Jocasta. He had been told to destroy it to avert a prophecy. But he had pitied the infant. He had given it to the man from Corinth, thinking the child would live a life far away from the cursed soil of Thebes. And years later, he had watched from the bushes as that same child, grown into a man, slaughtered King Laius at the crossroads. Oedipus stood alone in the center of the hall. The solver of riddles had finally dismantled his own life. He was the son of the man he murdered. He was the husband of the woman who gave him birth. His children were his siblings. His throne was a monument to his own sacrilege. A sound that belonged to a slaughtered animal broke from his mouth. He tore into the depths of the palace, demanding a blade, hunting for the woman who was both his ruin and his origin. He broke down the doors to the royal bedchamber. He was too late. Jocasta had already found her own exit. She had used her royal belt to fashion a noose and had swung herself from the rafters. She was hanging there in the center of the room, her feet dangling over the bed where her life had been unmade. Oedipus fell to the floor, the breath shuddering in his lungs like dry wind. He cut her down and held her cold body against his own. For a long moment, the only sound in the ruined bedchamber was the king's ragged breathing, heavy in the suffocating silence. He laid her gently on the stone floor, his hands trembling as he looked down at her dress. He saw the heavy golden pins that held the fabric at her shoulders. He took them in his hands. He remembered the words of Tiresias. He remembered how he had prided himself on his vision, on his ability to see the truth when others were blind. But his eyes had seen nothing. They had looked upon his father's blood and called it justice. They had looked upon his mother's body and called it love. He raised the golden spikes and drove them deep into his own eyes. He did not strike once. He struck again and again, the metal grinding into the sockets until the blood ran down his face like dark rain, soaking his beard and staining the floor of the room. He did not want to see the light of the sun. He did not want to see the children he had fathered in filth. He chose the darkness that Tiresias had inhabited. The plague lifted from Thebes. The air grew clear. The earth stopped its heaving, but the king was gone. Blind and broken, Oedipus was led to the edge of the city. He was stripped of his robes and his crown. Guided only by a staff and the hand of his daughter, Antigone, he stepped out into the dust of the road. A beggar, a ghost, a living warning to any man who thinks he can outrun the gods. He left behind a kingdom with no head. His twin sons, Eteocles and Polynices, watched from the walls as their father vanished into the distance. They were young, they were ambitious, and they shared the blood of a man who had broken every law of heaven and earth. The throne sat empty in the center of Thebes, a hollow prize in a poisoned house. The brothers looked at the crown, and then they looked at each other. The father had broken the laws of heaven, but the sons were about to break the world. Thebes was no longer choking on the dead. It was preparing for a slaughter. If you have the stomach to witness the sons of Oedipus burn their father's legacy to ash in the seven against Thebes, swear your oath and join our hearth at Mythkipedia. Speak your judgment below. Was Oedipus destroyed by the gods, or by the relentless pride of his own mind? We will read the omens in the next telling. Before the first black ship ever touched the sand at Troy, the war was already lost. The Greeks were not destroyed by a foreign enemy. They were not undone by a sudden curse, or a plague, or a monster rising from the dark waters of the Aegean. They were destroyed by a piece of parchment, a desperate pact, and a quiet, terrible realization by the king of the gods. We are told that the Trojan War was a story of stolen love, that a foolish prince of Troy took a queen of Sparta, and 1,000 ships launched across the sea to win her back. But the mythic tradition holds a darker truth. The Trojan War was not a romance. It was a harvest. It was a calculated culling, designed by Olympus to cleanse the earth of a generation that had grown too heavy, too arrogant, and too hard to kill. And the darkest irony of all is that the mortals built the slaughterhouse themselves. To understand the trap, you must understand the suffocating fear that built it. A generation before Troy, Greece had nearly torn itself apart in the mud before the 7 gates of Thebes. 2 brothers, the cursed sons of Oedipus, had dragged the greatest champions of the age into a brutal, meat-grinding civil war over a single throne. They slaughtered each other. They died with their teeth in each other's throats. The fields were choked with ash and bronze, and the survivors looked around at their ruined cities and broken lines of succession with absolute terror. They learned a hard, unforgettable lesson. Greek could not afford to bleed Greek. The realms were too fragile. Another civil war would leave the earth barren. But then came Helen. She was the daughter of Zeus, raised in the court of Tyndareus, the king of Sparta. Her beauty was not merely physical, it was a divine weight. It was a terrifying, unseen tide that dragged every ambitious man in the known world toward her father's halls. Dozens of kings, princes, and warlords arrived in Sparta to claim her hand. They did not come alone. They brought with them retainers, restless soldiers, insults, and the silent, heavy threat of unsheathed iron. They sat at the feasting tables, drinking Tyndareus's wine, while looking at each other with the cold, measured eyes of men weighing the cost of burning their neighbors' fields. King Tyndareus realized he was holding a torch in a room full of dry dust. The memory of Thebes hung over the great hall like a shroud. If he chose one man to marry his daughter, the other 49 would unite in their humiliation. They would slaughter the victor, burn Sparta to the bedrock, and plunge the world back into the nightmare of total war. Paralyzed by the dread of what would follow, the king stalled his decision for days. He sweat in his own throne room, trapped by the terrifying pull of his daughter and the armed men sleeping in his courtyard. It was here, in this atmosphere of suffocating paranoia, that the sharpest mind in the world stepped forward and made the greatest mistake of his life. Odysseus, the young king of Ithaca, looked at the gathered warlords and saw only a room full of dying men. He did not want to die with them. He did not even want Helen. He wanted her cousin, Penelope, and he wanted to sail back to his rocky island in peace. So he approached the terrified king of Sparta in secret. He offered Tyndareus a blood-bound pact to escape the room alive in exchange for Penelope's hand. Tyndareus eagerly agreed. Odysseus stood before the hostile armed suitors and proposed a vow. Before Tyndareus announced the winner, Odysseus declared, "Every single man in the room must swear an oath, not a gentle promise of good faith, a blood pact bound before the gods of the underworld, whose punishments for oath breakers are absolute and eternal." They would swear that whoever won Helen's hand would be shielded by the collective swords of Greece. If any man, from within their borders or beyond the sea, ever tried to steal her, every king in the room was spiritually bound to raise their armies and wage unrelenting war against the thief. It was a pact of shared ruin. It was brilliant in its absolute severity. It ensured that an attack on one was a declaration of blood debt against all. It made the cost of taking Helen so profound that no sane man would ever dare attempt it. The kings, desperate to avoid another Thebes, agreed. They did not simply speak the words. The ritual of binding was severe. They brought a magnificent stallion into the center of the courtyard. They slit its throat and hacked it apart on the paving stones. Pausanias, the ancient geographer, tells us that the kings of Greece were made to step barefoot directly onto the severed, bleeding pieces of the horse. Standing on warm flesh and pooling blood, with the scent of copper heavy in the air, the kings of Greece swore the Oath of Tyndareus. Then, Menelaus was chosen as the husband. The tension in the courtyard finally broke. The other kings exhaled, wiped the drying blood from their feet, mounted their chariots, and rode back to their kingdoms. They believed they had secured peace for a generation. They believed their thrones were safe. They did not look up. High above the ash and the stone, Zeus had been watching. The king of the gods had a problem. The earth was suffering. The mythic tradition of the Cypria tells us that the world was groaning under the sheer weight of humanity. Specifically, it was choking on the demigods. Men who were half divine, men with skin like bronze and pride like fire. There were too many of them. They did not die of old age, they only died by violence, and there was simply not enough violence to keep their numbers down. Zeus looked down at the earth and heard it begging for relief. A culling was required. He needed a massive, world-altering fire to burn away the age of heroes and leave the earth quiet again. But how do you kill the greatest warriors ever born? You cannot strike them all with lightning without tearing the fabric of the world apart. You need them to kill each other. You need a snare. Zeus looked down at Sparta. He saw the slaughtered horse. He saw the blood drying on the stone. He saw the treaty. Odysseus believed he had built a shield. Zeus saw that he had forged a single heavy chain, binding every kingdom in Greece by the throat. The kings were tethered together. If someone pulled that chain, every throne in the Greek world would be dragged into the same fire. Zeus had his instrument. Now, he only needed a spark. He did not choose a Leviathan to start his war. He did not send a plague to rot their crops. He chose the sharpest weapon in the divine arsenal, vanity. Zeus gathered the divine host for the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, laying the snare for his war. He deliberately ensured that Eris, the goddess of discord, was turned away at the door. He knew exactly what she would do in retaliation. He watched as she threw the golden apple into the crowd, a beautiful cursed thing inscribed with the words, "For the fairest." He knew Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite would demand a judge, and he specifically chose Paris to make the choice. Paris was a weak, lustful shepherd prince of Troy, entirely blind to the vast, cold designs of the gods. He was a boy who could be easily bought. Zeus knew exactly what Aphrodite would offer the boy to win the contest. She did not offer him wisdom or an empire. She offered him the most beautiful woman in the world. She offered him Helen. When Paris sailed to Sparta, he thought he was enacting a grand, daring adventure. He broke bread at the table of Menelaus, accepting the sacred protection of a guest, all while watching the king's wife. When he took Helen in the dead of night and slipped his ships out into the dark waters of the Aegean, he thought he was a cunning thief taking a prize from a sleeping man. He did not know he was a tool. He did not know that by touching Helen, he was picking up the end of a chain that bound the entire world. He was a blind man stepping heavily onto a trap set by the king of the gods. The moment Helen was gone, the jaws of the trap snapped shut. Menelaus woke to an empty bed. He walked to the center of his courtyard, stood where the blood of the horse had dried years ago, and invoked the oath. The messengers rode out from Sparta immediately. They did not ride with gentle requests. They rode with the fury of a blood debt. The sound of their lathered horses and pounding hooves echoed like a plague across the land. They carried the dread to Mycenae, to Argos, to Pylos, to Ithaca. The messenger arrived on the rocky shores of Ithaca with dust still clinging to his cloak. In that moment, Odysseus realized what he had done. He looked at Penelope, the woman he had traded a world-binding oath to marry, and the truth crashed down on him. The desperate pact he designed to save his own life in that crowded room in Sparta had just chained the entire Greek world to his throat. There was no escape. To break a blood oath made on the severed flesh of a sacrifice was to invite the Furies. It was to invite total ruin. They had tethered themselves to a single stone, and Zeus had just pushed that stone off a cliff. The heroes gathered at Aulis. They brought their black ships, their bronze spears, and their sons. They marched not because of honor, and not because of love. They marched because they were bound by the cold, heavy iron of their own fear. 10 years later, the earth would no longer groan under their weight. The plains of Ilium would be rich with their blood. The thrones of Greece would sit empty. The age of heroes would be broken forever. Odysseus forged a chain for peace. Zeus used it to butcher a generation. And the earth finally was quiet. If you want to know what happened to those who tried to break the blood oath before the ship sailed, subscribe to the channel. The gods do not forgive cowards.